Good evening, I'm Farhan Asheh and you're watching AWANI Tonight. Flash floods strikes Klang Valley again. And our borders may reopen soon. Are we nearing the end of the pandemic? That's coming up. Flash floods have hit several locations in the capital city following heavy downpour in the afternoon. Videos and pictures from social media users shows cars and roads submerged by floodwater. Among the areas affected in the city are Jalan Kuchai Lama, Jalan Tun Razak, Masjid Jamek, Jalan Raja Chulan, Jalan Pudu as well as Jalan Pahang. The National Disaster Management Agency said that several rivers in Kuala Lumpur and Selangor rose past the warning level, while one had exceeded the danger level. The Met Department forecasts bad weather until March 13th, with thunderstorms expected in several areas in the west part of the peninsula, as well as Sabah and Sarawak. This is the fourth time that the Klang Valley has been hit by flash floods in less than 3 months. All of the country's international checkpoints will be open as Malaysia moves towards reopening its borders. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob is expected to make the announcement this week.
Tourism and Culture Minister Datuk Seri Nancy Shukri said the land routes between Malaysia and Singapore via the Johor Causeway and the second link will be opened simultaneously with the opening of the country's borders. Meanwhile, Immigration Director General Datuk Seri Khairul Zaimi Daud said all autogates have been reactivated on Saturday in preparation for the reopening of borders. He added immigration officers at international entry points who were previously sent to temporary depots during the pandemic had also been recalled.
In anticipation for the much-awaited border reopening, we asked ICS Yusof Ishak Institute Dr. Jayan Menon on whether or not this is the beginning of the end to the pandemic.
There are clear signs that we are moving towards that final ending, if you like. But, we never know. But so far, we know this is a highly transmissible variant, Omicron, and there's quite clear evidence now that it's not as dangerous as previous variants. So it's becoming more and more like other viruses that we've had to live with. And so it does look like we are getting to the point where we shouldn't have these extraordinary measures in place to try and limit the transmission, which is having huge costs, not just to the economy, but also to health indirectly, because our hospital system is now completely sort of crowded with COVID cases when they don't need to be.
Malaysians should not fear a rise in cases once border reopens, said Jayan, as most COVID cases are transmitted locally.
When you open borders, you will not see a big rise in cases. Cases are being transmitted locally because this is so transmissible. Before Delta, the number of imported cases were a multiple of locally transmitted cases, 3 to 5 times, or 3 to 500%, right? Now it's about 3 to 5%. It's a small fraction. So it's not about borders, it's about domestic movement. We have to get used to the idea that crossing the road to enter your neighbor's house is no more risky or no less risky than crossing international borders. In fact, when you cross international borders, you get tested before and after, and so on. So it's probably less risky. I think you can retain some protocols to try and increase safety, like testing. But I think quarantine has already seen its day. The value from quarantine for health benefits is very low now because this is just too transmissible. If you don't quarantine people for going out of their house, you shouldn't quarantine people for entering the country.
Meanwhile, Muda launched its manifesto for the Johor state elections today, promising fast and responsive elected representatives. The Young Party also promised to push its manifesto promises, whether in government or opposition. On the issue of housing, Muda proposed that the state government buy properties in bulk from private developers and resell it to the public at a discounted price. To tackle unemployment, Muda proposed an incentive for local companies hiring Johorians. Muda said it also wants to improve the practice of democracy through the formation of a People's Council, seeking public engagement to assist elected reps in making better decisions. We speak to Muda candidate from Parit Raja, Fikri Musa, on what he has to offer and some of the challenges he faces while campaigning.
It's just that they will keep asking why always looking all the chalons or the candidates very young candidates. So that's a tricky part. That's a I think the most question I got here. So that's the best part I can explain to them is we want to make sure politics that we're moving forward is a new politics. We don't want to take the old politicians, they just recycle, just put a new brand on that. We don't want that. We keep pushing new politicians, new ideology, and then we do make sure this new character will make sure these people will be good to the rakyat itself. So there will be no hidden agenda, there will be no recycle agenda moving forward on.
Fikri aims to address 4 issues facing Parit Raja residents: to create more low-cost housing, increase assistance to SMEs, uplift the agriculture sector and improve on basic necessities like internet and roads.
The roads is very narrow and everything, right? So not just that actually. The problem with Parit Raja is that some places which the kampung is already more than 20 years, but then the road lights doesn't even have that. The internet, not just internet, phone line also doesn't have that. But these people actually commute day in, day out over there. They live there. So this is the basic necessities for these people. I don't see why this people doesn't get this access early on. Because I used to be a mahasiswa, I used to be a student in UTHM before. So back, I think almost 10 years ago. This problem, I've seen it then, I still see it now.
Muda, he said, despite being a young political party, has a lot to offer.
People of Johor and later maybe in PRU, which all Malaysians will involve, will give us a chance. Because even though we have a very different character, some of us are very strong, some of us are very radical, but then we are holding the same ideology. We are focusing on politik khidmat and politik dasar, and this is what we want. We don't want to focus on old politics, all those corruptions and the racial politics. We want to change that because we realize if we don't change it now, we afraid it's going to be too late later.
Former Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin has refuted the claim by Datuk Sri Najib Abdul Razak that not a single cent of public funds was used by the government to repay the principal amount of 1MDB debts.
According to Muhyiddin, the government already paid 13.3 billion ringgit of 1MDB's debt so far, money which he said belonged to the rakyat. Muhyiddin also pointed out that the task force that he formed during his time as Prime Minister had successfully repatriated 23 billion ringgit of stolen 1MDB money and assets.
Bayangkan jika Yang Berhormat Pekan masih Perdana Menteri. Saya tidak fikir dia akan menubuhkan sebuah pasukan petugas khas untuk mencari wang dan aset 1MDB yang hilang. Kerana yang menghilangkan wang dan aset itu pun dia. Jadi benarlah YB Pekan ini seorang yang cerdik berbohong.
He reminded Najib that 1MDB debts are guaranteed by the government. And so when 1MDB failed to repay its debts, the government is the one who has to fork out money to pay off the debts.
Malaysia will revise its poverty line. Economy Minister Datuk Seri Mustafa Mohamad says the Department of Statistics will conduct the review. The amendments are expected by the first quarter of next year.
Saya ingin maklumkan Dewan ini juga bahawa jawatan perangkaan akan menyemak semula kadar kemiskinan. Kalau pada Ministeri Peringkat Nasional, pendapatan garis kemiskinan PJK ialah 2208 bagi satu keluarga, household, dan bagi miskin tegar ialah 1169 bagi satu household. Dan angka ini akan disemak dan dijangka pada suku pertama tahun depan akan dipindah sewajarnya.
Malaysia's poverty rate spiked to 8.4% in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Mustafa said that despite the lower incidences of poverty compared to decades ago, the country still faces challenges such as the issue of low salary and wage, as well as inequality of development between regions and states.
We go for a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Russia's military says it will hold fire and open humanitarian corridors in several Ukrainian cities today to allow evacuation efforts. According to its defense ministry, the ceasefire started at 10 a.m. Moscow time or 3 p.m. Malaysian time. Evacuation routes were set up in the capital Kiev, as well as Kharkiv, Mariupol and Sumy. All of these cities are currently under a significant assault by Russian forces. Ukrainians, however, criticize Vladimir Putin's offer for evacuation. Two of the routes offered will lead Ukrainians to Russia or its ally Belarus. Only the smaller cities, Mariupol and Sumy, have evacuation routes that led to other parts of Ukraine. Officials from Russia and Ukraine are expected to hold a third round of talks today about ending hostilities. It was a turbulent day for global financial markets as the war in Ukraine drives up the oil price towards record levels. Brent crude oil soared past $130 a barrel today, the highest since 2008, as Western countries explore a ban on buying Russian oil.
Shares in Asia-Pacific declined on Monday, with Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index sliding to its lowest level in almost 6 years. The sharp rise in oil prices came after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Sunday that Washington and its allies are considering banning Russian oil and natural gas imports. Compounding this news was the delay to the conclusion of the Iranian nuclear talks, which could lead to lifting of sanctions on its oil sector. The surge in oil prices has increased concerns that the world economy could face stagflation, with consumer prices surging and slowing growth pushing up unemployment.
Meanwhile, China is seeing a new surge in COVID-19 cases across the country. Despite its zero-tolerance approach to dealing with outbreaks, it reported 214 domestic cases with confirmed symptoms, the highest in 2 years.
Most of the cases were reported in the southern province of Guangdong, bordering on Hong Kong, which has been recording tens of thousands of cases per day. While Premier Li Keqiang said China's COVID control measures will be fine-tuned to minimize disruptions to economic growth, he gave no indication Beijing might ease its zero-COVID strategy. Li instead called for accelerating vaccine development and strengthening epidemic controls in cities where travelers and goods arrive from abroad.
That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. For all the latest news updates, head on to astroawani.com and the Astro AWANI app. I'm Farnashe. Thank you for watching and good night.